Everything changed in a literal matter of seconds. I mean, the final whistle blew on the 2025 season. And for the Los Angeles Rams, the silence echoing through the concrete walls of that locker room was, well, it was absolutely deafening. Welcome to NFL Nexus, everyone. I'm your host. And before we unravel what is easily one of the most fascinating and frankly contentious offseasons we've seen in recent NFL memory, please hit that subscribe button, like this explainer, drop a comment with your thoughts down below, and consider supporting the channel by becoming a member. Your support is exactly what allows us to keep bringing you these uncompromising deep dives into the sport we all love. Okay, let's get right into it, because today we're embarking on a cinematic explainer into the intense, incredibly high-stakes reality of the 2026 Los Angeles Rams. And look, this isn't just your standard story about a team trying to incrementally get better. No way. This is a story about a rapidly closing championship window. It's about a proud, veteran franchise that is utterly torn between the ghosts of the future and the violent, unforgiving demands of the present. And ultimately, it's about a colossal front office gamble that could completely define an entire era of football in Los Angeles. To truly understand the sheer magnitude of what the Rams front office actually did in the 2026 NFL Draft, you first got to understand the excruciating pain of how their 2025 season came to an end. The immediate aftermath of their devastating NFC Championship loss to the Seattle Seahawks was raw. It was visceral. You could practically cut the tension in the air. It was thick with the kind of regret that genuinely haunts players for the rest of their natural lives. And sitting right there in that locker room, amidst the heartbreak and those empty 1,000-yard stares, Rams linebacker Jared Verse offered up a jarring, brutally honest admission. He just looked up and simply said, "We keep beating ourselves." Just let that sink in for a second. Think about what that actually means. This wasn't a team that just got outclassed in the trenches. This wasn't a roster devoid of explosive top-tier talent. This was a squad that looked in the mirror and realized the enemy wasn't just wearing a Seattle uniform. The enemy was their own fatal mistakes. When you are exactly one game away from the Super Bowl, playing in the hostile, freezing environment of late January, the margins aren't just thin, they are literally razor thin. Verse meticulously dissected the agonizingly small details that completely derailed their campaign. See, the Seahawks didn't throw some surprise left hook. They didn't unveil some mysterious, unbeatable offensive scheme that the Rams hadn't accounted for during film study. No, the Rams just imploded. It was a catastrophic drop pass on a crucial 3rd and 7 crossing route in the fourth quarter that completely killed a sustaining drive. It was a failure to simply set the edge on what should have been a routine outside zone run. It was whiffed open field tackles against Kenneth Walker that somehow turned 3-yard gains into back-breaking chunk plays. And this is the ultimate tragedy of playoff football. The sheer talent on your roster. Yeah, that gets you to the NFC Championship. But the absolute, unwavering demand for flawless execution, that is what actually gets you a win. The Rams lacked that execution. They beat themselves in the most agonizingly preventable ways imaginable. And that lingering, bitter taste makes what happened next so utterly fascinating. But here's the wild part. The despair in that locker room, it quickly morphed into something else entirely. Defiance. In the very same breath that he ruthlessly criticized their own execution, Verse made a completely cocky, unwavering assertion. He said, "When you stop beating yourself up, you win. It's easy to win. We have all the pieces we need." Wow, I mean, this is the ultimate, undeniable declaration of a win-now locker room. The guys on that roster genuinely, wholeheartedly believe the team, right now, exactly as currently constructed, is fully built to win a Super Bowl. They believe they are locked, loaded, and ready for an all-out war. They don't want to rebuild. They don't want a cute little transition period. And that belief, that absolute uncompromising certainty from their defensive leader, well, it sets up a palpable, jaw-dropping tension for what the Los Angeles front office eventually decided to do next. Section 1. The future versus the now. A roster divided. So the Rams arrive at the controversial, utterly shocking 2026 NFL Draft completely caught in a massive tug-of-war. On one side of the building, you've got a desperate locker room practically screaming that the time to win is right now. On the other side, you have a forward-looking front office nervously eyeing the ticking clock of an aging roster. And what happens when the men in the tailored suits fundamentally disagree with the men in the helmets? You get a franchise-altering collision of philosophies. Let's look at their glaring roster vulnerabilities heading into April. The Rams desperately, and I mean desperately, needed a dynamic edge rusher to complement the defense and actually get home to the quarterback on 3rd down. They needed wide receiver depth, especially with an aging Devontae Adams facing down Father Time, and those lingering off-field questions surrounding Puka Nacua that could drastically alter his availability. They needed lockdown cornerbacks. Basically, they needed immediate, day-one contributors who could step onto the grass and make a crucial tackle in January. But instead,
At pick 13, in the first round, they drafted quarterback Ty Simpson, a player selected not to help them beat the Seahawks this year, not to catch a crucial pass on third down, but to eventually, someday, in the distant future, replace Matthew Stafford. It was a seismic shockwave, a completely future-focused selection that entirely ignored the immediate gushing wounds of the starting roster.
Now, publicly, of course, the team is holding the line. Defensive standout Byron Young came right out and stated he was all for it, fully supporting the Ty Simpson pick to the media. But come on, beneath that carefully constructed PR speak, a dark, heavy reality looms over the facility. Taking a backup quarterback in the first round during a rapidly closing championship window carries a massive unspoken risk. Every single snap Ty Simpson takes on the practice squad this year is a glaring, walking reminder of the first-round talent that isn't on the field, rushing the passer, or catching touchdowns on Sunday. Sure, the players say they support it now, in the sunny optimism of the offseason, but put yourself in the grueling, oxygen-deprived depths of the fourth quarter in a playoff game, when the defense is absolutely gassed and the offense desperately needs a spark. A backup quarterback holding a clipboard on the sideline literally cannot help you win.
Section 2. The players left behind. The cost of the future.
So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the brutal, unforgiving arithmetic of the NFL draft. Drafting for the future isn't just about the specific player you acquire. It is entirely about the players you sacrifice to get him. It's the opportunity cost. Let's really lean into the smallest, most agonizing details of this draft fallout, because the Rams left a staggering amount of immediate, game-changing talent on the board. Let's meticulously unpack this. At pick 13, they take Simpson. In doing so, they explicitly bypassed edge Reuben Bain Jr. We are talking about a premier, violent talent with lethal burst off the edge, a guy who racked up double-digit sacks in college and possessed the heavy hands to immediately inject terror into opposing backfields. They bypassed wide receiver Omar Cooper Jr. and offensive lineman Monroe Freeling. But perhaps the most painful misconnection of the entire night, wide receiver Mekhi Lemon, an incredibly dynamic playmaker with elite, sudden route running ability who could have instantly solved their looming receiver depth issues and created immediate separation against press coverage. And where did Lemon end up? He was immediately snatched up by the Philadelphia Eagles. The Rams didn't just pass on generational talent. They allowed a top-tier weapon to fall directly into the lap of a fierce NFC rival they will very likely have to face in the playoffs. It's wild. And this brilliantly illustrates the compounding nature of their entire strategy. Moving into the second round, pick 61. The Rams select tight end Max Clare. Now look, if the overarching goal of this draft was truly to eventually replace Stafford, they could have just waited. Because sitting right there, completely available in the second round, was national championship-winning quarterback Carson Beck. Penn State's massive, strong-armed Drew Aller was also right there. But let's look at the immediate offensive weapons they just blatantly ignored. They skipped Zachariah Branch, an absolute lightning bolt of a receiver. We were talking about a player with reported sub-4.3 speed, a literal human joystick, who routinely embarrassed elite defenders in the open field at USC. A guy who takes the top off any defense the absolute second his cleats hit the grass. And who capitalized on the Rams' pass? The Atlanta Falcons, another aggressive NFC contender, instantly upgraded with arguably the most explosive athlete in the entire draft, while the Rams took a tight end. But wait, the agony only deepens as we go into the third round. At pick 93, they grab offensive lineman Keegan Trost. And yes, obviously protecting the quarterback is absolutely vital. I'm not denying that. But look at the sheer firepower they willfully ignore to secure him. They skipped Jermod McCoy, one of the most hyped, heavily scrutinized cornerbacks coming out of college, a player with incredibly fluid hips, elite ball skills, and a proven ability to absolutely lock down the perimeter against the best receivers in the country. They skipped edge Danny Dennis Sutton, and astonishingly, they bypassed wide receiver Elijah Sarrett. Guys, we are not talking about some developmental project prospect here. We are talking about the man who led the entire FBS in touchdown receptions, a proven, terrifying red zone monster, completely left on the board by a team whose locker room is quite literally begging for the final finishing pieces of a Super Bowl puzzle. Even in the late rounds, the decisions just invite intense, unforgiving scrutiny. Round 6, pick 197. The Rams finally take a receiver, C.J. Daniels. But let's look at who they deemed unworthy of that pick. They passed on the fan-favorite Navy running back, Eli Heidenreich. But the most dramatic omission here, without question, is linebacker Red Murdoch. Murdoch wasn't just a football player. He was a violent, offensive game plan wrecking machine. This man logged nearly 300 stops across the 2024 and 2025 seasons. Let that number marinate. He set a career record for forced fumbles in college and led the entire FBS in that category. Remember Jared Verse complaining about missed tackles and a lack of defensive execution?
Red Murdoch is the literal, physical definition of defensive execution and secure tackling. And the Rams just looked the other way.
Finally, we reach the Flyer rounds. Round 7, pick 232, defensive tackle Tim Keenan III. Again, if drafting a young quarterback was such a burning, undeniable desire that it cost them their extremely valuable first-round pick, look at who was lingering at the absolute bottom of the draft. Garrett Nussmeier, who eventually went to the Chiefs. And the ultimate wildcard, Diego Pavia, the Heisman runner-up, the quarterback who took the brutal SEC by storm, leading the single toughest, most unforgiving conference in all of college football in completion percentage, passing touchdowns, and yards per attempt. A proven, gritty, battle-tested warrior who walked into hostile environments week after week and carved up first-round defensive backs. The Rams passed. It concludes an intense, mind-boggling draft autopsy that leaves fans deeply wondering if the front office is playing a 10-year game of chess while the locker room is fighting a desperate, bloody ground war today.
Section 3. A brutal NFC West. The unforgiving gauntlet. Zooming out from the insulated, theoretical vacuum of the draft room, we really have to look at the massive, unforgiving scale of the 2026 season. Because the decisions made in April, they don't exist in a spreadsheet. They exist on the grass of the NFC West. And the NFC West right now is an absolute bloodbath. By skipping all of these immediate, high-impact contributors, the Rams have placed a terrifyingly dangerous wager on their current roster's ability to survive an all-out arms race. Let's methodically look at the roadblocks in this division alone. First, you have the team that just ended their season, the Seattle Seahawks. They boast a defensive line that is nothing short of terrifying, generating a relentless pressure rate specifically designed to completely exploit the very offensive line depth the Rams neglected early in the draft. Then, the San Francisco 49ers, an ultra-talented, hyper-efficient machine orchestrated by Kyle Shanahan that thrives on punishing the exact kind of single momentary lapses in execution the Rams showed last January. And finally, you've got the rising threat of the Arizona Cardinals, a team completely poised to disrupt the hierarchy with Kyler Murray's elite game-breaking mobility and a surging offense. The reality here is chilling. Securing a top 2 NFC seed in this meat grinder leaves absolutely zero margin for error. You cannot afford to draft for 2 years from now. You just can't afford to wait for the future when the monsters are already knocking at your door.
Which brings this entire cinematic narrative full circle, locking us right back onto Jared Verse's stark, unwavering warning from the very beginning of this explainer. When both rosters are excelling, when you put two talented rosters against each other, it's who executes better. The Rams undeniably believe they have the talent, but the Seahawks have the talent. The 49ers have the talent. The NFL is an unforgiving, hyper-violent arena where mere potential goes to die and only perfect, violent execution survives. The Rams front office bet their most valuable first-round asset on the year 2028, but the Rams locker room, those men bleeding on the field right now, are begging for the tools to simply survive 2026.
So as the clock ticks down to kickoff, as the Los Angeles Rams prepare to march back into the relentless meat grinder of the NFC West, the question just hangs heavy in the air. When the talent is equal, when the game is on the line in the fourth quarter, and when the margin between a legendary championship run and a forgotten failure is a single dropped pass or a single missed tackle, who will execute? Thank you so much for watching this explainer. If you want to keep diving deep into the cinematic, high-stakes reality of the sport, make sure to subscribe to NFL Nexus, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the Rams' wild draft strategy. I really want to hear what you guys think. And please support the channel by becoming a member right now for more deep, unmissable NFL storytelling. I'll see you on the gridiron.